tonight Shana has joined us. She has come from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was fortunate to actually meet her, I think it was almost a year and a half. Well, no, not even a year ago. About 6 months ago. I travel so much I don't even know when I met you. About 6 months ago when I was attending an Indian Health Service HIV conference, and Shana spoke there. And fortunately, I think that I guess for the most part, they allowed plenty of time for her to really share her story. And so I was so moved by that story, and I couldn't wait till she stopped talking, so I could run up and steal her business card and then email her immediately, come to World AIDS Day for us. And luckily for me and for my staff and for you tonight, she said yes. And so not only has she agreed to do tonight, but she basically said, I don't like assemblies, so don't put me in front of an entire school crowd. I would like to do 7 presentations a day. I don't mind. Put me in there. So not too often do I get speakers like that. I don't get them. So I want to acknowledge you for that, because that's something that a lot of folks are not willing to do. And I think that the girls today, as Mindy had them in her class, I think that they were very much affected by her story and her heartfelt messages that she gave. So she's online. You can find her there. She might even share a little bit of a story about Lucille. She didn't share that earlier, so maybe she'll tell you a little bit about Lucille. I found that out a little today when I was doing my background check. So without further ado, Shana, would you join us? You don't have to worry about this silly mic.
I'll try to do my best to speak loudly. If I'm not speaking loudly, please just say that I need to speak louder. I try to do this as often as I can, and I realize microphones are not always very friendly or easy to handle or to deal with. I want to let you know that what I have brought with me is a very, very personal story. I also have personal photos of my family that I'm sharing, and so I will be showing them up here. If you have a hard time seeing, please come to the middle of the room so you can see right here. This type of presentation is completely from my heart, and I can only talk from my own experience. I do this because I care. Okay, so I have a lot to say. It kind of takes a little while. There's a lot of pieces, and I'm totally open to questions. There are no questions that I've ever been afraid of or, excuse me, couldn't answer. My throat is totally dry from having talked all day to students, so kind of running out of a voice. When I was growing up, AIDS was not something that was talked about. AIDS was not something that was taught in schools. AIDS was something that happened in the media because it was front page news, because it was an issue that was happening in certain parts of the country and to certain populations. And I distinctly remember never seeing a picture of a woman in any of that information. I distinctly remember hearing a lot of messages that HIV was a gay disease, or that HIV was a drug user disease. I don't remember hearing about it being a disease for everyone, that if you were simply human, you were susceptible. So a lot of the common myths that happened back then are still common myths today. Oftentimes people believe that you can tell by looking at somebody.
Can you try?
Yes, I will try. Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Often people tend to believe that you can tell by looking at somebody. if they're HIV positive or if they have AIDS. Oftentimes people think, well, I know my boyfriend or my girlfriend well enough, we've known each other, we've been going out for a long time, so I would know if they had anything. And then again, in some areas of the country, there are laws that are supposed to protect you. So some people think, well, there's this law out there that those people who have it are supposed to tell their partners. So therefore, you know, they would say it. They're required to say it. And lots of people also think that it's okay to just not use a condom one time because you're not going to get it if you just forget once. And the facts, as we now know, are that you will never be able to tell by looking at someone if they're HIV positive or AIDS. And you can get HIV from one time from not using a condom. You may know your boyfriend or girlfriend incredibly well for years, but if they've never been tested, they don't know their status. And these days, there are more people who get infected simply because of the belief system that it will never happen to me. And we keep getting new cases all the time. Some information about me is that, you know, I grew up with those myths. I grew up with that it's not going to happen to me. It's somewhere else out there in the world. It happens to other people. It's happening to other communities. It's happening to other groups. And I'm just not at risk somehow. It's not me. I apologize, this is a picture that is a little bit hard to see, but this is actually a family picture. There's a baby picture of me there, and then another picture of me when I was 12. I was adopted and raised in a white family growing up. I was adopted at birth. I was one of the last babies adopted out before ICWA became enacted. And so I grew up in a very privileged home. My father was a pediatrician. My mother had gone to Harvard. Everyone in my family are college graduates. There were a lot of good things about growing up in a privileged family. I had excellent schooling. I never went hungry. I never had a want or a need. Everything was provided for. And I thought that we were pretty much just your average American kind of life. I did know from a very young age that I was adopted. And I did know from a very young age that at some point, someday, I was going to go home and go find my biological family. The bad side of the family that I was raised in, however, was that my father was an alcoholic, and he had a small problem with child molestation, which began for me at the age of 2. It also happened to my brother. I don't know what age it happened to him, and it did not happen to our sister. So one of the things that I have struggled with my entire life is dealing with those issues that occurred in that family. Those are the types of issues that run deep into your core and have certainly had an impact, I feel, on how I also later became at risk for HIV. The picture of the baby up in the corner is actually a picture of a baby that has genital herpes. When babies are born with herpes, they are born blind. And from the age of 2, I was given the herpes infection from my father. My mother asked my dad what the infection was, and he tried to tell her that it was something that I got from my birth mother. But we know that that's impossible because otherwise I'd be blind, and I'm not blind. So lots and lots of taboos there. And the picture in the middle is me at age 10. That's actually a very sad picture of me. I was in the tree and I felt very safe up in the tree. Another kind of interesting piece about growing up with that family was that at the age of 13 we moved to Holland. It's kind of strange because I'm the only Kiowa that I know of that's fluent in Dutch. I was taught French and German, but I can only read a little bit in French and German these days. I could probably order something at a restaurant and find a bathroom, and that's about it. We lived there for 5 years, and that was for my dad's job. And nothing makes you feel further away from your biological roots than moving with a white family and going all the way to Europe. So anyway, at the age of 18, I essentially said, thank you very much to my parents. However, it is time that I need to go and find my mother. I had always had that deep connection somehow just on a spiritual level to who she was. I didn't need to know the reasons why she gave me away. I just knew that we were connected. So when I turned 18 and left the family I grew up with, I ended up embarking on a journey to find my Indian people, a journey to find all the traditional native roots that I could find, regardless as they were in other tribes as well, because I wanted to get my hands on everything. And I was on a journey to find my mother. In that process, I came across some amazing, wonderful, beautiful people all across the country. And I also met my first boyfriend. I had specifically decided to wait to have sex. When I was in high school and everyone else and my sister and all the girls in high school were having sex, I wasn't interested. I had too much internal trauma, and I wanted the decision that when I shared my body, that it was of my decision. I wanted it to be my choice when I shared my body. So I thought that waiting until I was 18 was a good thing. My first boyfriend was Cheyenne Arapaho, and we were head over heels in love with each other. And from my family growing up and from the high schools that I went to, because we didn't have HIV education in school, we didn't really have even STD education in school, I thought that my responsibility was to simply use birth control. All the other girls were on birth control, and condoms were for the girls who slept with everybody. So we used birth control. We used spermicides, we used sponges, we used diaphragms. We used as many preventative methods to try to stop us from getting pregnant as possible. However, as a lot of you know, Indian women are incredibly fertile, and so we got pregnant anyway. I became a mother at the age of 20. These are baby pictures of my son. And becoming a mother for me was a huge privilege and a huge change I wasn't completely ready for. Not a lot of 20-year-olds are. So I knew that this was going to change everything. And that quickly deteriorated our relationship. When I wanted to go shopping for baby clothes and diapers, he wanted to go spend money on going out and partying and for his new ball caps or new tennis shoes or something. So we fell apart fairly quickly. Our relationship really only lasted about 2.5 years. James was a baby when we broke up. To him, partying and drinking and jail and that kind of stuff was a little bit more fun than being a parent. So, being a single mom at the age of about 21 was a new endeavor. The only piece that I can say that I had really admired about my dad was that he had dedicated himself to the medical profession and had got himself through that much schooling. I had had a fabulous labor and delivery with my son, so I wanted to be an OBGYN. I wanted to help deliver babies into the world. And I figured I could be a doctor, I could make great money, I could take care of myself and take care of my son. So I decided, since I was a newly single mom, that I would enroll in college and try to figure that out. While I was in college, I met a second gentleman. He was Eastern Band Cherokee from North Carolina, and he was quite a bit older than me. So I had just turned 21, and he was there getting his second master's degree. He was charming, he was very good looking, he was very worldly, and he spoke to a lot of the more adult type needs that I felt that I had. My first relationship was with a boy, and this guy felt like a man. So in the process of dating him, I thought that the responsible thing to do when you begin a relationship is to go through all the questions and put everything on the table and put everything out in the open. And so I asked him if he'd had lots of relationships before me, if he had any STDs, and I shared with him that I had been infected with herpes before, so that was something that we had to be careful for. And I asked him if he had ever used IV drugs. I asked him if he had ever slept with a man. And I asked him if there was any reason why we needed to use condoms. I didn't like condoms. I just had the belief that they were awkward, they were uncomfortable, and I just didn't think that I needed them. I thought that they were for other people from other communities who engaged in other behaviors where that type of barrier was needed. And essentially, he told me everything that I wanted to hear, which was, I don't have any STDs, I've never had a lot of partners, and I've never shot up drugs, and I don't have anything, so we don't need to use protection. The relationship with this gentleman lasted for about a year, and I discovered at about 9 months after being with him that I liked him a lot from Monday through Thursday, but then come the weekend, I didn't like him at all. He was a classic binge drinker on the weekend, and I was not comfortable with that. I had grown up enough with having an alcoholic father. I didn't want an alcoholic role model for my son. So on lovely breakup day, I decided to tell him that, we were done. We had tried everything, we had given it our best shot, but we were done. And on our breakup day, he said to me, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going anywhere. I have an AIDS diagnosis, and so now so do you. And I needed somebody to die with, and I picked you. And our breakup day had become violent. The sheriffs had to be called, and he had to be escorted off the property. So it was not, there were lots of things that were said that day, in addition to that. So his statement about him saying that he had AIDS followed him out the door when he left. I gave it no credibility, I gave it no value, and I didn't believe that it was true. About 2 weeks later, a girlfriend of mine at school said, "So are you going to get tested?" And I said, "No, I've had 2 boyfriends. You know, I'm trying to raise my son. I'm trying to go to school. I don't have time to get tested." And she said, "No, are you going to get tested?" And I said, "No, because doesn't AIDS, I mean, that happens like in the gay community, and like you have to be really promiscuous, and like you have to have tons and tons of partners, and or you have to have shot up drugs, or like," and she just kept stopping me and saying, "You are incredibly uneducated. You need to go get tested." And all of those internal myths about who gets HIV. So there's the stigma. What do those people look like? Ooh, aren't they scary? And there are those people that are way over there. And all of that was going through my head. And I argued and I argued with her and argued to the point that she put her foot down and said, "I will not be your friend anymore if you don't go and get tested. You absolutely must go and deal with this. If you take the test and it turns out that you are not infected, that's great. You simply just went and took a test. If you go and take the test and you are positive, you need to know now." So I went and I took the test at my local on-campus clinic. I was really embarrassed to ask for an HIV test. I didn't want to just say, "I want the HIV test," so I said, "Go ahead and test me for everything. Test me for gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, and HIV, and give me a pregnancy test," because I was trying to hide the fact that I was asking for an HIV test. And the nurse was like, "Sure, fine, great." And in those days, it took 2 weeks to send them off to the state lab and then to get our results back, so I had to wait. During the 2-week time period, I didn't think about it. I wasn't worried about it. I felt fine. I looked fine. Everything felt hunky-dory. When I came in for my results, I was the only person in the clinic with the nurse and this very strange lady from the health department. No offense. I understand the health department stigma. I do. And my nurse said, "Come on in, we need to talk." And, and then she burst out into tears. So I knew something was up. So I sat down and she said, "Well, all your test results have come back great, except your HIV. And you are HIV positive." And then everything that she said after that for the next hour, I didn't even hear because I was in shock. And I flashed back to the day that I broke up with my second boyfriend and the statements that he had made that day. And then part of me thought and remembered a lot of the things that my dad had said, that in the medical profession there are sometimes errors that are made. There can be human errors made in the process of research and in scientific methods. It just happens. And so I said to her, "You know, this is probably just a huge, horrible mistake, and it's okay. What we'll do is I'll just have you test me again, and I'll come back in 2 weeks, and then you'll see that everything is fine." So she drew labs again, sent them out, and I came back 2 weeks later, and 2 weeks later my lab results still said that I was HIV positive. When my second results said that I was HIV positive, it began to really dawn on me that this was my reality. And because I am who I am, and because I need to be absolutely 100% sure, I asked her, I said, "Please do a third test result. I just need to know 100%. Just please do it. And if I have 3 test results in a row that show that I'm positive, I'll believe you." So the third went out, the third came back, and the third was still positive. So when you are 22 years of age, raising a 2-year-old, how do you deal with being diagnosed with HIV? That's my son when he was little. The first people that I called after I got my diagnosis was my parents. I immediately assumed that I would get to go home. My parents now live in California. They're no longer in Holland. I thought I would get to go home. I thought they would take care of me. And I thought that if anything happened to me, that they would take care of my son. And even though it was all very sad and terrible and scary, I thought that that was going to be the next logical step. However, when I called my mother and told her what had happened and what my diagnosis was, her statement was, "I'm sorry to hear that, sweetie. Good luck with that. Okay, goodbye." I did not speak to my parents for 7 years. And this is unfortunately incredibly common, way more common than I wish it was, that families will abandon their HIV positive family member right off the bat. I guess for my dad and among his colleagues, he was embarrassed, and he didn't want anyone in his community to know that his daughter had HIV. And neither did my mom. So over the 7 years without them, there were no Christmases going home. There were no birthdays going home. My son does not recognize them as grandparents. And to me, that's a huge loss. Huge. Because I know for a fact that when I was 22, I desperately still needed a mother. So, how do you raise a child when you're HIV positive? In addition to also getting the diagnosis, I was then sent to a clinic in the city, and at the AIDS clinic in the city, the doctors wanted to see how well I was dealing with the disease, and so they needed to find out how many T cells I had. And I didn't know anything about what my T cells were or what their function was. Didn't just, I was on a huge, fast learning curve to try to understand what this disease was. And so I was taught that normal, healthy people, such as you folks sitting here, have anywhere between 750 to an average of 1,200 T cells. That's a normal, healthy range. And then I was taught that HIV takes away those T cells. They literally just burst them and explode them inside your body because the virus replicates, makes copies of itself, and that's what it does. And I was taught that the end stage of this disease is called AIDS, and that when your body loses its T cells all the way down to 200, that you have an AIDS diagnosis. So my very first lab results, unfortunately, with my HIV specialist doctor, showed that I had an automatic AIDS diagnosis. I had 189 T cells on my very first lab draw. And that also is not very common. However, for some very mysterious reason, among Native Americans, this disease seems to hit our bodies incredibly hard. Perhaps our immune systems are just designed more delicately because we have not been exposed to the types of diseases that European generations have been exposed to for hundreds of years. I don't know. There's definitely a lot more research that needs to be done. But within the 1 year that I was infected, my immune system was depleted. So it wasn't just that I had HIV. it was that I had an AIDS diagnosis. And how do you deal with an AIDS diagnosis, go to school and be a student, and raise a child? I wasn't sure how to do any of those all at the same time. And it was tough. However, I discovered that all the crying and all the slamming doors and all the getting mad and all the shouting and screaming at the sky did not take away my diagnosis. Each new day that I woke up, I was still a person living with AIDS. And we were subjected to lots and lots of discrimination. In my early years of being diagnosed, I was desperate to try to find anything I could to boost my immune system. So I tried Chinese medicine, I tried acupuncture and acupressure and lots of massage and body work. I took lots and lots of different herbs and remedies and different things to try to just boost my immune system. So I spent a significant amount of time and money at the health food store. And by the time my son was about 4, he knew that there was a name for this disease. And he knew that it was AIDS. So he would be in line with me at the checkout at the health food store, and I'd be buying these buckets of vitamin C and huge things to try to boost my immune system. And he would talk to the cashier, and he would say, "Do you see all this stuff? This stuff is for my mom, because my mom has AIDS." And then he would notice that everyone that was in line behind us got out of line and went somewhere else. And he would be really confused by that. He would say, "Mommy, why are people afraid of you? Why don't they want to stand next to you in a line? Why do they say you're going to some place called hell? Why do they think that you're evil? What does that mean?" And those are some really tough questions to answer to a 4-year-old. Really tough. So not only is it the fact that I have to live with this disease, but I have to live with how the disease has impacted my son. Because there is no secret. There was no trying to hide when I had pneumonia 4, 5, 6 times a year and had to go to the hospital and stay there. There was no hiding bronchitises, and there was no hiding surgeries, and there was no hiding rashes from head to toe. He knew, he saw everything. And the big question, unfortunately, which was not my part of my choice, but it ended up happening. His paternal grandmother had decided one day that she was going to try to prepare him. And she said to him, "You know, when you're going to be 7, you're going to come live with your grandma, because your mom's not going to be here anymore." And that absolutely terrified him to the core. A child should never be told that they're going to lose their mother, ever. And the entire year that he was 7, he was petrified. His grades went down. He didn't want to read. He didn't like playing outside. He liked to sit on my lap right here every day. And then when he turned 8, we celebrated. We rejoiced. We were happy. We relieved. Because this disease does not just impact me, it impacts my son. So he has seen the effects to its core. And it's hard. How do you promise a kid when you're going in for pneumonia and it's going to take you about 3 weeks, how do you promise a kid that you're going to come back out? You try. But that's what it was like. This is a very short list of what AIDS does and what it has done to me. I've had PCP pneumonia, which is a very painful pneumonia. There's pneumocystis carinii pneumonia. It just hurts just to inhale and to exhale. It hurts. There's walking pneumonia, which is fine. I can deal with that. I can walk around and have walking pneumonia, and I'm fine. But that pneumonia, it really just kicks your butt. I've had shingles, so that's a return of your chickenpox. I've had viral meningitis. I've had bacterial infections and had to have my appendix removed, but it actually really wasn't my appendix that was about to burst. It was a massive E. coli infection that was occurring in my gut. So I was heavily doused with IV antibiotics for weeks, a consequence of not having an immune system. I've had cervical dysplasia. I do continue to get regular walking pneumonia every year, about twice a year. This year I've been really lucky and I've only had it once so far, so that's awesome. Peripheral neuropathy can best be described as when you sit down on your knees and your legs fall asleep, and then you stand up and you have this tingly, weird feeling in your legs, and you don't want to walk yet. It's like that, but it happens in your legs and it happens in your hands. And oral hairy leukoplakia, which is just when your mouth just gets covered with lovely yuckiness, and bacterial diarrhea, which unfortunately there's a lot of lovely stories about that. In order for me to wrap my head around this disease and to really accept it, I had to find some way to not hate this virus. I had to find some way to embrace this, to be okay with it, to be friends with it. So I had an internal dialogue. I introduced myself to it. I said, okay, you came in here unannounced. I didn't know you were coming, but here you are, and obviously you're not leaving, so we got to share this space. So we're going to get along. And that helped somewhat, but what ultimately, truly and deeply helped me was how much I found as support in my Native community. My HIV doctors and my HIV community were outstanding, but my Indian doctors and my Indian medicine was a complete miracle. I was told things and I was prayed for and I was supported in ceremony in a way that I did not even know was imaginable. I just did not even know that it was possible. Every elder that I approached and said, I'm a woman, I'm desperate to live, I have an AIDS diagnosis, I don't know where this disease came from, but it's here and I have it, I desperately want to live. These beautiful Native elders sat me down and said, it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay, and you need to believe that. And I had to trust that. I had to. They said some very interesting things. They said that they had seen this coming. And they said that in their belief, the way that we human beings are behaving on this planet at this time, we have damaged the immune system of the earth, which we know is true. We know that we have hurt resources. We know that we have hurt our water sources. We have hurt our air. And therefore, it was time for us human beings to have a mirror put up in front of us. And the best way for us to understand that was to feel it, to feel what it's like to not have an immune system. So they said, that's why we're here with this. And you don't have to accept that, but I believed that was a very beautiful understanding of how we've come to this place in this world at this time. And I felt much more at ease and much more calm with the knowledge, and I trusted that those prayers that were said, and I trusted that those ceremonies that were conducted were for my health and my wellness and my overall survivalism. I was very fortunate to be able to have survived until 1996, which is when all the new HIV meds came out. All the billions of dollars that were fundraised in the 80s and the early 90s were pumped into research which created HIV meds, which is what we have now. In 96, we found out that combination therapy, when you attack HIV from different angles, from different sides all at once, you can suppress HIV all the way down to undetectable levels, which means that if you draw the blood, it doesn't look like it's even there. It is there because it's internal. It's actually inside the white blood cell, but it's not external with free-floating copies. And that's an amazing medical advance that they came up with quickly. So my combination is I take 16 pills a day, which is truly nothing, because when combination medications first came out, I was taking 54 a day. And some of those were taken in every 4 hours, some of those were taken every 6 hours, some of those every 12, some were refrigerated, some had to be room temperature, and some were liquid. So 16 pills a day is nothing. I also have between 48 to 55 trips to the pharmacy per year. I have doctor's appointments with my HIV specialist. I have an additional one for feminine care because women are susceptible to additional issues that are very separate from men, unless men develop a uterus one day. And I have lab draws 4 times a year, case management, nutritionist, and of course, therapy. And this is just the maintenance. This is not the additional getting sick. This is just the maintenance work. This is what it takes to just get by. My HIV meds cost a lot of money. These are actual scans of my receipts from my pharmacy. They are not cheap. $2,200 a month just for my HIV meds, which is equal to $27,000 a year. That is some people's whole salary. And since I have been on these meds since January of 2000, because these are what's working for me, they have cost a total of $317,000 just for me. So when you think about the 33.4 million people who need all of that every year, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of medication. And that's a lot that can be prevented. This slide's a little bit difficult to read, I apologize. It's the side effects to medications. And side effects is everything that's circled. Everything from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, headaches, skin rashes. My hair has fallen out, which when you're a Native woman, that's never a good thing. Everything that has happened on there is what I have suffered through. Taking toxic medication is not easy. I've had my days where I really just wish that I didn't have to, or I wish I could have a day off, or I wish I could just take a vacation from my meds, but I can't. So I was lucky, again, to have made it to 96 and to have started combination therapy. And that brought my immune system from the very depths, because they've been as low as 11. up to the 100s and low 200 ranges. And I wasn't out of the woods, but I was certainly a lot better off than having only 11. When I had 11 T cells, I was pretty much just terrified whenever the wind blew. So it was as if I was given a new lease on life, in a sense, and I didn't really know what to do with it. The entire time that I've been diagnosed HIV positive, I would occasionally be approached by a guy who would be interested. And when they would express their interest, I would just be flat out blunt and just say, honey, you don't want this? I've got AIDS, so okay, just goodbye, go on. Because I was literally and completely and totally just wanting them to go away. I wasn't interested in men for a long time. I didn't want another STD or anything. But it's hard to be a young 20-year-old and to completely abstain and just become a nun. So eventually, I did come across a gentleman who just did not go away. Try as I did, he was persistent and very interested. And on date number 3, I expressed to him my status. I told him my history. I told him that I could not promise any type of relationship. I could not promise him 5 years or 5 months because I didn't know. And his response was, you know, I really like you for who you are, and I think you're really cute, and I'll take whatever I can get. And I don't care how long that might be. So I was okay with that. And this is him. He is a huge goofball. In 1999, we got married. My family didn't know about it, but then during the 7 years that they were gone, or that I was gone, whoever was gone, my sister and my brother were married, and I didn't know about that. So, and he has been 100% supportive of my health and of my needs and of my son. He has embraced all of this work, and he also has committed to not being ashamed, because I have been adamant about telling him that if we're going to carry shame and fear about this disease, then how are we changing anything? We just have to be fearless. If your parents don't like it, I'm sorry. We just have to be fearless. If your friends don't like it and your colleagues don't like it, I'm sorry. The world needs to get used to this. And so we are fearless. Within a year of us being married, and my viral load became undetectable, and my T cells continued to rebound into a healthier zone. And my daughter loves the story. We chanced upon a night where a condom busted. And she loves that story because she thinks it's like she just popped out of a box like a surprise. Fortunately, that was just right at the beginning of discovering that HIV meds, which can suppress the virus, are also safe for pregnant women. And so we had a little girl, and her name is Donica. And we got my husband tested, and he is HIV negative. And I went through the entire pregnancy maintaining all of my HIV meds all throughout the entire course. And then she was given antiretrovirals as soon as she was born for 6 weeks. And then she was tested at 2 weeks, 2 months, and 6 months. And all of her test results showed that she was HIV negative. Babies these days, born from HIV mothers, have a 1% chance of being infected. That's 1 in 100 babies. Not that I was going to have 99 more, but coming from the days where our statistics were 1 in 4, 1 in 100 babies those are really good odds to move forward with a pregnancy. So, my busted condom baby, Donica. And then, because I had such a beautiful, loving relationship with my sister when we were little, we decided, after Donica was born, that we were going to give Donica a sister. And that's simply an easy process, because all I needed was, we didn't engage in risky behavior. I simply asked for the condom after we were done having sex, and I turned it inside out, and I inserted it. And voila, you have a baby. So we were creative, because we didn't have $10,000 to go do in vitro or something. And my girls have grown up, again, no secrets, no hidden stories. Everything is up front. No shame. It's time to just be fearless. And that's how they approach it. Just this past week, my daughter, or just recently, my daughter had to take a interesting newspaper article, I think was how her teacher said it to her. And so she ran into the garage, and I had these stacks of the local newspaper where last year on World AIDS Day, the Tulsa World newspaper decided to plaster my face right on the cover. And she said, "Mommy, I don't want to take any other article except for that one that's about you. I'm going to take that to school." And she did. And I told her she was going to come across some questions. She was going to see a look of surprise on her teacher's face, and that some of her classmates might have questions. And she was like, "Okay, that's fine. I'll tell them." And Mallory is just kind of the light and humor of our family, and knows how to make all of us laugh whenever it's needed. But again, it isn't just me who is infected in the family, it is my entire family who is affected. My children cannot ignore the fact that I have to go to the doctor, or that we have to all religiously wash hands, or that when they come home from school and they have a cold or they've caught something, that when they get sick, I get doubly sick. But we do our best, because that's all you can do. No one has promised you how long you will be here. No one has said to you, you get to be 65, and you get to be 72, and you get to be 108. You have absolutely no idea how long you get. And guess who grew up? Very happy to be as far away as he can be now from the age of 7. He is going to be turning 20 in January. And he is also a peer educator. He started a GSA at his high school. He was the first one to come openly out in his high school. I always knew. He came out when he was 15, and I support him, and I'm proud of him, and I love every ounce of him. But he is also dedicated to helping his generation of teenagers understand. No glove, no love. So, stigma around this disease is still ever present and it's everywhere. Because, I mean, honestly, why did I have to come all the way from Oklahoma to come and talk to you when there are HIV positive people here in this community? And that's stigma. So that's a powerful thing. And I don't wish to be treated like a disease. I wish to be treated like a person. I have a disease, but I am a person first. I completely and firmly believe you have to be the change. You have to. If we are going to eradicate the fear around this disease, if we are going to get rid of the old myths, the old stigma around it, we have to be willing to step up and show what needs to be done. And we can do it. This is a picture of me the one summer I decided to cut my hair short and have a perm. And I was getting a B12 shot at my local AIDS clinic, and that was Donica when she was a baby. And the nurses at my AIDS clinic absolutely adored her. They were always carrying her around. So when you think of what AIDS looks like, we no longer think of the early 80s when people looked absolutely sickly. And that is an image that we're never going to forget, because at this point it's still something to be honored. But in this day of age, you will never be able to recognize, walking down the street or in Walmart, if someone has HIV. HIV can look like this, like an average family. And that's why it's ever important that we know as much as we need to know, and that we do as much as we can do to stop the spread. HIV is 100% preventable, and we can get all new infections to stop. If you need any resources or have further questions or would like to go to some great websites to go to, I strongly suggest that there is a wealth of information online about HIV and AIDS these days, as well as these fabulous guys who are dedicated to making sure that great quality information gets out there. And if you would like to contact me, I am always open. I want to thank you very, very much for allowing me to be here in your community. I am very proud, and I always feel very honored to share my experience, because it's my hope that by even just sharing what I know, it has helped one person to understand what this truly is. So thank you.